Turning to tensions in Portland, the city's bracing for dueling rallies from Antifa and right-wing protesters.
That's right, Dan. This after journalist Andy Ngo was violently attacked by Antifa back in June. He says to brace for a potential powder keg, in his words, this weekend.
That journalist, Andy Ngo, joins us now with more. Good morning to you, Andy. How are you doing?
Good morning.
How are you doing, Andy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I am working on my recovery. I am really concerned about the Antifa versus right-wing protests that are happening tomorrow. I think it has the potential to be a powder keg. I mean, in Portland, political violence is a banality now. However, the demonstrations tomorrow are looming in the shadows of the recent mass shootings by the far left and the far right ideologues. And there are extremist elements who are broadcasting their desires for bloodshed. On top of that, police seem to be at a breaking point. They're severely understaffed.
But the police will be there. Don't you trust the police to keep the peace?
Oh, I wish I could, but as many of your viewers know, it's nearly 7 weeks ago now, I was beaten and robbed in daylight in the middle of downtown Portland in front of the police precinct by Antifa, and there still has not been a single arrest.
Really? Why is that?
I don't want to be cynical about the Portland police. I know that they are working under a lot of political pressures because in Portland, our mayor also doubles as police commissioner. There are a number of other variables at hand. I just hope that by now the authorities and those in power have gotten their act together so that we don't see repeats of violence or potentially deadly violence tomorrow.
Andy, I'm getting from some of my law enforcement sources that it's not the rank-and-file police officers on the ground. They understand there's an issue at a lot of these rallies and that things need to be done. We saw the awful video of that just horrendous attack on you. They're saying, my sources at least, that it's more of a management issue there, that there's kind of a, I don't want to say stand-down atmosphere, but don't get involved because it'll make the situation worse. But I don't see how it could get any worse. That attack on you was brutal. It's tough to watch even now, and I've seen it 20 or 30 times.
Yeah, I think a stand-down atmosphere is actually not an overstatement. So Portland has an odd political system where our mayor is also, who's up for re-election in a city that is extremely anti-police, is also doubling as a police commissioner. So it's from my perception, based on my coverage of the events over and over, that there may not be a vocal stand-down order, but in practice, the policies that are outlined for police is basically stand-down. They, as you've seen in videos that go viral over and over, Antifa and other far-left militants can take over the streets of downtown with impunity.
We got a statement from Chief Danielle Outlaw with the Portland Police Bureau about the protest, and this is what the statement says. Portland Police Bureau members continue to plan for the upcoming demonstrations. The demonstrations will be impacting a very small area of Portland, and I encourage everyone to enjoy what will likely be a beautiful day by engaging in fun activities at a number of community events. Thank you, Andy, for being with us. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so, I mean, the graphic that the Portland police released was basically showing the area for citizens to avoid. Basically what's happening is that Antifa is creating literal no-go zones in the city, and now we have a map of where we can go and where we can't go.
And so these right-wing protesters know where Antifa is going to be, and they're just going to go get in their face? Is that what's going to happen?
I believe the protest was first planned by the right-wingers, and then the counter-protest in response is by Rose City Antifa and their allies. So it's probably the inverse that will happen.
Well, we will be watching. Andy Ngo joined us today from Portland. Thank you very much.
I wish you the best with your recovery. Thank you, Andy.
My pleasure.